Raghavendra, thank you very much for your presentation and thank you for joining me in this pop-up setup here.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Maybe we can start the interview by you just briefly explaining who you are, what company you work for, and what role you have at the moment.
Sure. My name is Raghavendra, and I'm working for Robert Bosch Engineering and Business Solutions. I'm based out of Stuttgart. My main responsibility is about innovation strategies, coming from a market and an industry view. And I'm heading a department which is looking at new bets. So when we call about bets, it is about the things that we can make us successful.
Maybe you can start by giving us a brief overview kind of about the innovation framework at Bosch, or the innovation process and some of the principles, and how your work fits into that.
So before I say something about the frameworks, what we believe in Bosch is about innovation is that before somebody else disrupts you, why don't you disrupt yourself? So the fundamental thing is that the disruption should be within than somebody else disrupting it. So we have multiple frameworks that we work on, innovation. One of the favorite is the design thinking framework that we do. We also have an intra-collaboration that we have. For example, we have institutes like GROW, where we have a few foundations where people with great ideas come together and really make it happen. We also have institutes where we collaborate with startups. So there's no one single instrument which has been there, but we have a broader spectrum of innovation tools that we have. But the most systematic one is the design thinking and the business model innovation, which we kind of use from the University of Berkeley.
Now, blockchain is one of many emerging technologies. More generally, how do you approach and how do you sense which kind of those new technologies are relevant for the business?
Correct. So we don't really look at technology only in isolation. We always look at an intersection. So the point is that what we look at it, what are those big problems will these technologies solve? For example, if you take the mega trends, like for example, you have the shared economy, and then you have the future of habitat or future of world, which is about sustainability. So what we believe is that what are those technologies which can really help us or help the entire world to move into those things. And now if you look at blockchain perfectly fits into these two things. One is on the shared economy, where you are sharing the assets, where you need a ledger which is providing you the provenance, but you also have a sustainability where you prove the provenance of where did the goods come from. So we try to look at this technology of blockchain mainly not just taking the technology innovation, but also try to look at what big problems it will solve. And we believe it will solve, or it will enable us to play a fair play in shared economic context and sustainability, which is for the future.
Now, within a larger corporation and also within many of the industries you work with, there is it's highly regulated. How do you deal with that? Working on something really new where there's a lot of uncertainty around it, also from a regulative perspective.
I think if you've heard many of them saying transformation, they add to everything. They call it as a digital transformation. They talk about intelligence transformation. They talk about technology transformation. So what we believe is that the power is in the word transformation. So the transformation cannot just happen with technology. It also has a human element. It has a human behavior element into it. For sure, the regulations are very, very well understood and well important things. But what we believe in Bosch is that we will have favorable regulations in future. We don't just look at the negative aspects of regulation and don't experiment the technology. We kind of go on and on to show that how can this technology be leveraged for the future of humans, and that's where we live for even invented for life at Bosch.
Many of those technologies, including blockchain, really demand new sets of capabilities and skill sets. Where do you find them? do you skill people within the company, upskill them, or do you hire new people? How do you find those capabilities and skill sets?
I think Bosch is quite fortunate, I would say, because it's really a global organization itself. In the sense, we have different, kind of people working into it. So if we take this example of artificial intelligence or blockchain for that matter, we have three development centers or research centers in the world. One which is in Stuttgart, which is in Renningen. We have another one in Palo Alto, another one in Bangalore. So the talent pool that is available is, you have a different kinds of talent pool which is available, not just in the diversity of the geography, but also in the diversity of the knowledge which are there. Just to tell you, Bangalore and India, you have a lot of digital native people. In the sense, people like me have been always digital native, so we kind of look at technology in a much systematic way. When you look at Germany or Europe, they're really an expert on the domain, in the sense they understand automotive like the most experts in the world could understand. And of course you have the Silicon Valley, the valley that is coming onto the west, where there's an entrepreneurial mindset where you're kind of trying to look into it. So when you look at these combinations, this is how we kind of leverage building new things. It's not that it is confined to one department and one units. So today most of these new things, we do it in 3 locations, and that's how we try to build it. Coming back to the question of reskilling, I think this is yet another very important aspect that we do. One of the things is to motivate people to really go in the higher order of what they deliver to the day-to-day activities. So we believe in 3 things, that is purpose, autonomy, and mastery. So these are the 3 things that Bosch actually believes and tries to explain to the colleagues. So if you take these 3 activities, if you are able to discover a purpose for your associate or for your employees, if you can provide autonomy for him to accelerate or excel in what he's doing, and then finally give him a path for mastery. So I think with these 3 things as pillars, we kind of look at how can we reskill the employees or reskill the associates for higher order innovation. And I think we have been quite successful for last 100 and 130 years.
When it comes to teams on specific projects, how do you assemble those teams and how do those teams evolve? What kind of people work on that team?
Correct. It's a very nice question, but diversity is one of the major attributes of a team formation. So diversity is not just with ethnic, where you come from. It's about diverse ideas, diverse functions. It's about diverse age groups. It's about diverse gender. So one of the key aspects that we focus when we form the team is that, do we have a team which has diversity and which brings a lot of color onto the table? This is one attribute for it. The second thing is that do you have governance for these teams? In the sense, the moment you kind of create diverse and externally open teams, you don't really end up with conclusive things if you don't have a governance for it. And then finally, the third one is to have an objective outcome for every task that has been there. So just to tell you on the third point is that you need to break the larger goal into very small pieces, so that the team feel empowered to solve it. You don't have to give the large problem for it. So diversity. Then the second is to look at the passion in the team, where they can come together, and finally bringing small purpose to this team is what we do.
Now you were talking about a proof of concept in your presentation. How do you generally, what is important when setting up kind of experiments or proof of concepts in those areas that are not really known? Who do you do it with? How do you select the testing users or companies?
So usually it starts with a champion. So even the proof of concept that I spoke about, there are definitely, even if you go by statistics, with a large company like us, definitely you have great minds. So what is important is when the champion approaches with a right idea, what is necessary is to empower this idea with the right fabric. so that you don't fall into the valley of death. In the sense, you kind of look at how can I empower this champion. So the first foremost important thing that happens is you kind of start with a champion. The second thing is you co-opt with different champions because they're like-minded people who try to do it, and then formally build a virtual team. So one of the team that we have built, which they call it as the top projects. So usually you need to go and bid for such idea, and you get the funding from the large board onto it. And this top project actually executes these projects and say, hey, I will lead and become the change agent with this technology of blockchain. So it's from a champion to forming a team which is more virtual.
This was more a description of the internal processes, if I understood you correctly.
Yeah.
How do you run experiments, or do you run experiments also with the potential users and customers? And how do you do that in the early phases?
Yes. For example, it is very important that we understand the customers of our customers. So any innovation that we do, we kind to involve, the customers quite early enough. So there are tools that we do. We have a lot of technology days. We do a lot of co-innovation. For example, we had a real co-innovation workshop with large OEM just 2 weeks back, where the experts from Bosch as well as this OEM actually came together and tried to look at, how does this technology of AI help us, or blockchain help us for the future. So by doing this together, we kind of look into mutual, advantages and create a win-win situation. So to answer your question, we start well early enough to understand whose problem am I solving, and can I really discover the customer's customer into it.
Let me drop another keyword into the discussion, which is leadership. What is important in terms of leadership when thinking about data science teams?
Correct. So this is my very personal view about leadership, is that I believe that leadership is all about empowering. It's about how can you remove the obstacles for your team. The earlier leadership was about guiding and telling what to do. But now with the new generation coming in, where information is no more a priority for them, the leadership would be only about how can I really stay away from the situations which my team can encounter. Can I really remove those barriers, and can I make them win? So making others win could be a good mantra for this leadership. And this is what we are trying to do even with Bosch, which I talked about, autonomy. So providing autonomy, and especially in the areas like analytics or AI or blockchain, which is a new area in the sense where you need to follow a path where you don't know what the end goal is. It's all about removing the obstacles.
Last question, more a broader question. If you think about innovation, how has it changed in the last, let's say, 10 years? And what are the reasons for those changes, you think?
What has changed is, I go with an analogy of champions and challengers. So initially, it was always the game of the champions. And last 10 years, what happens is the challengers have actually really challenged the champions. So what has really changed is today the entire fulcrum has moved towards how are the challengers who are working either with or against the champions. So to give an example, in the industry that we are in, we had the guy who challenged us who was no more in our industry. Like for example, Tesla challenging the large automotive. So the main driver why innovation has changed in last 10 years is that the challengers are becoming more prominent. They are becoming more outliers into the entire ecosystem. So one very important thing that has changed is what I feel in 10 years is how can I look at those outliers and how can I become a challenger for my own industry. And that's where I started saying that, for us, innovation is about disrupting yourself. Can I disrupt myself before somebody else disrupts? And this mindset is what I feel has changed. Otherwise, we were always doing a continuous improvement, but we never were able to do a radical innovation.
Thank you once again for your presentation, and thank you for that pleasant and interesting conversation.
Thank you so much, Leonard. See you.